What's up everyone, it's Hockey Strix here, bringing you my second ever YouTube video and my second in a row that's going to revolve around the NHL's return to play plan. This time it's going to be about the round robin portion of returning to play. In this video we're going to go over the rules of the round robin, then do an NHL simulation of what the round robin could look like, and then we're going to look at that in combination with my results from my simulated play-in to see what this 16-team bracket could look like in real life. First, let's get into the general process of the round robin. It says here in the document that the top 4 teams will play for first round seeding and regular season overtime rules will be in effect. That means the top 4 teams in each conference. So in the Eastern Conference, we'll have the Boston Bruins, Tampa Bay Lightning, Washington Capitals, and Philadelphia Flyers each play each other one time for a total of 3 games played. In the Western Conference, we'll have the St. Louis Blues, Colorado Avalanche, Vegas Golden Knights, and Dallas Stars also each play each other one time for a total of 3 games to determine seeding. There's one other important aspect we need to look at from the document, and that's how round robin ties will be broken. It says here that regular season points percentage will be used to break ties after the round robin process. Alright, so let's get into the NHL 20 simulation of the round robin tournament. Alright, so here we are guys, back on NHL 20, just showing you guys that I am using the official online roster that's currently active in EA instead of my custom roster before I get into the round robin games. So to do the round robin, I'm actually going to set up another playoff mode. I know they're not in a playoff bracket type of thing, but this is the best way NHL 20 has to do it. Alright, so here we are guys, setting up the playoff mode. I'm going to have to do this 3 different times for each team to play all 3 other teams that they're playing against in the round robin. But we have the first one set up here. We're going to do all 8 teams, single knockout, period length of 20 minutes, and then the same OT setup as the reg season as per the NHL's return to play plan. Difficulty on Superstar and game style on full sim. So I have no idea what order the round robin is going to go in. NHL has not specified any sort of schedule. Obviously, we don't have an exact timeline. I have the matches set up. The first set of matches, this is just 1 game against each other each. So we have St. Louis versus Colorado because they have to play each other. Vegas versus Dallas. And then here in the Eastern Conference, we have the Boston versus Tampa game and the Washington versus Philly game. Like I said, I'm going to have to do this 3 different times. We'll come back and set this up, and each team will get a game against each other for the round robin. Let's get into these first 4 games. So it looks like game 1 is going to be Colorado versus St. Louis. Let's get into the simulation. And we have Colorado taking a 4-3 win in the 3rd period over St. Louis in their game against each other. Let's get into the second Western Conference game at this point. We have Dallas versus Vegas. After 1 period, it's 2-0 for Vegas. Ben Bishop's in net. 3-2 for Vegas here. Dallas is making a bit of a comeback, and here we go into the 3rd period. And Vegas wins in regulation. Alright guys, now it's time to get into the first Eastern Conference game, Tampa Bay versus Boston, which I know a lot of us will probably be excited to watch when it really does come on. Alright, let's get into the first period. 1-1 after the first. 3-2 for Boston heading into the 3rd period. Boston's playing Rask, Tampa's playing Vasilevsky, as we would expect. Let's see what the 3rd period holds. And Tampa makes a big comeback, 4-3. They win the game. And this is where the seeding round robin thing is going to get tangly for fans. They're going to be mad. Boston was clearly in the first seed in real life, but they lose to Tampa, which could easily happen in real life. Alright, it's time for the last game of the first set of games here. Philly versus Washington. We have a 0-0 tie after the first period. Big second period, 2-2. And we're going into the 3rd period tied up. And Philly takes the win over Washington in their game. It's a big win for Philly. Alright, so I just realized maybe I won't have to set this up 3 times. Here we can do our games where Colorado is against Vegas here. And we can also do Philly versus Tampa. Alright, so let's get into the Colorado versus Vegas game. After the first period, tied 0-0. After the second period, Vegas is up 1-0. And we have a big 3rd period, and Vegas wins the game 3-1 against Colorado. Time to get into Tampa Bay versus Philly. 0-0 after the first, which is becoming a trend apparently. 0-0 after the second. We have a close game here. Tampa won that first game, and Philly won their first game. So First loss of the round robin for one of these teams coming up. And Tampa takes the win, and Vasilevsky shuts out Philadelphia. So I have to go set up another playoff mode where matchups that haven't happened yet. I'll see you guys in the next set of games. Alright, so here we are, guys, about to set up our second playoff mode. As you can see, the settings are the same again. The 4 matchups that haven't happened yet for the round robin. There's only a couple remaining after this. Hopefully they can match up in the second round of this playoffs and I can luck out. But anyways, let's get into these 4 matchups. We have the first matchup in the Western Conference, Colorado versus Dallas. After the first period, Colorado's up 1-0. Colorado goes up 2-0 after the second. And Colorado shuts out Dallas. Vegas versus St. Louis. St. Louis takes a 2-0 lead. Vegas starting to make a bit of a comeback here. And St. Louis wins the game 2-1 against Vegas. Let's get into our Washington versus Tampa Bay game. We have a tie game after the first period. Washington's taking a lead after the second, and here we are going into overtime. Overtime sees no results to the shootout, I guess. Washington wins the game in a shootout. Let's get into Philly versus Boston. Big first period for Boston. Looks like Philly's going to lose this one probably, and Boston takes a 6-1 win and lights up Carter Hart. Alright, so at this point we locked out, and the Boston versus Capitals game that needs to happen for the round robin is occurring in this playoff, so we're just going to get to that and sim that, and then we have 1 game left. Okay, here we are. Let's get into the Capitals versus Bruins. Boston takes a 1-0 lead. 2-0 after the second. And nothing from Washington. Boston shuts them out 2-0. So at this point, the round robin for the entire Eastern Conference is done. I'm going to tell you the results in a bit. Alright, here we are, guys. We have 1 game left, so we're doing a 1v1 single knockout playoff mode for the Cup, and it's going to be St. Louis versus Dallas. Doesn't actually have the stakes of a Stanley Cup, obviously. It's just to get the round robin completed. Here you can see we have St. Louis versus Dallas, the last game of our round robin. No goals in the first. 1-1 after the second period. And St. Louis takes the win in regulation 2-1. So at this point, the round robin's completed for the Western Conference as well. I will say the Dallas Stars did not have a good round robin if you've been keeping up closely. We'll get into this in the next portion of the video. So now that you guys have seen all the games simulated on NHL 20, let's get to pooling those wins and losses together to get the results. Here in the Eastern Conference, you can see the points results for Tampa, Boston, the Capitals, and Philly. You can see Tampa takes that first seed, obviously. Here in the Western Conference, we have a 3-way tie. So I'm just going to reiterate the tie-breaking procedure goes by regular season point percentage. So let's get up the regular season point percentage for all the teams. So here you can see the regular season point percentage for the Eastern and Western Conference teams. Obviously, there's only one tie that needs to be broken in the Eastern Conference, and that's Capitals and Philly. And now you can see how that's going to pan out. And down in the Western Conference, we have a 3-way tie. So let's just get the final seeds up now. Here we have it. Tampa takes the first seed from Boston, as we know. Capitals take the 3rd seed, Philly 4th, and obviously Boston 2nd. In the Western Conference, nothing changes essentially. St. Louis keeps the 1st seed, Colorado takes 2nd, Vegas 3rd, and Dallas 4th after going 0-3 in the simulated portion. So this is the part of the video where we're going to use some results from my previous video, and that was about the NHL's return to play qualifying round. So if you don't want any spoilers, you want to go back and watch that video, I'll leave a link in the description. And right about now, we're going to go and look at those results. Here we have the results from the last video about the qualifying round. The important thing I'm going to grab from here, other than just reiterating who won, is what seeds they are so that we can seed these teams versus the round robin teams to get the 16-team bracket. In the Western Conference, we had the Oilers taking the 5th seed. The Minnesota Wild got the 10th seed, the Arizona Coyotes got the 11th seed, and the Winnipeg Jets took the 9th seed. In the Eastern Conference, we had Carolina taking the 6th seed, Pittsburgh taking the 5th seed, the Toronto Maple Leafs taking the 8th seed, and the New York Islanders taking the 7th seed. Let's go look at what the NHL's 16-team bracket's going to look like for the real playoffs now. There's a couple things I want to point out about how I did up this bracket, because the NHL hasn't clarified if there's going to be reseeding after play-ins or not. But since the teams are all split up into 2 hub cities, and the teams are asking for there to be reseeding, I'd be very surprised if they don't reseed at this point. So there's 2 points I need to make here about this bracket. I did reseed after the play-in round because, like I said, I think that's going to happen. And I also think that divisional seeding becomes irrelevant at this point because of just the way it works out. There's 3 teams from the same division that all end up in different matchups in the West. So I think the divisions go out the window, which I think is fine because all teams in one conference are in the same city. I don't think it matters at that point, and that's why I think they will do the reseeding and that the divisions won't matter at this point. So let's get into how I actually ended up doing the seeding. We have the first seed St. Louis Blues playing the 11th seed Arizona Coyotes, and then I think that they're going to let the first seed get the 4th seed inside their top half of the bracket. So we have the Dallas Stars playing the Edmonton Oilers, 4th versus 5th. And then in the second half of the bracket, we have the Colorado Avalanche, who took the 2nd seed, playing the Minnesota Wild 10th seed, and the Vegas Golden Knights 3rd seed playing the 9th seed Winnipeg Jets. I think they're going to do this and separate the 1st and 2nd seeds since the divisions will be out the window, in my opinion, at this point in time. Let's see how the seeds worked out in the Eastern Conference in this simulation. We have the 1st seed Tampa Bay Lightning taking on the 8th seed Toronto Maple Leafs. Then we have the 4th seed Flyers taking on the 5th seed Penguins. The 3rd seed Caps taking on the 6th seed Canes. The 2nd seed Boston Bruins taking on the 7th seed New York Islanders. So obviously I did the same thing over here in the Eastern Conference. I think the 1st seed is going to get the 4th seed matchup in their top half of the bracket, and then the 3rd and 2nd seeds will be in the same half of the bracket. Because I expect there to be reseeding after the play-ins, but I don't expect there to be reseeding after the first round, because that's the NHL doesn't do reseeding after the first round typically. But I think it's fair to do it after the play-ins because of how wacky some of the matchups could get. So just some thoughts on how this simulation worked out as a whole. The draft lottery simulation part was pretty crazy. But the round robin simulation part doesn't end up with any teams in the playoffs that I don't think could have potentially made the playoffs in real life. All these teams could have made the playoffs. Arizona was slipping out of a playoff spot, but they could have turned it on. Phil, Keller, Hall, they could have turned it on and made it. The Minnesota Wild was making a very strong push. Kevin Fiala was having a sick year at this point. And the Winnipeg Jets are a team that I think deserve to be in the playoffs and could give Vegas a lot of trouble there in their matchup. Let's look at the Eastern Conference seeds before we clue up this video. Basically, there's not a whole lot to say here because seeds 1 through 8 made it into the playoffs. So anyone who was not liking that extra teams made it, the Eastern Conference, there's not much to complain about, although we do have some great matchups. Tampa Bay versus Toronto is going to be super exciting. It's just going to be a high-flying battle of skill. We all know what the Flyers versus Penguins is like. That's going to be great. Then we have the Capitals versus Canes, another great matchup. And then we have the Bruins versus Islanders, which I think could be very exciting as well and get very physical. At this point, we have the 16-team playoff bracket made. We've simmed everything about the return to play other than the part we're all waiting for, the actual Stanley Cup playoffs. So in the next video, we will sim that actual 16-team playoffs, crown a Stanley Cup champion. I'm excited to do it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, but make sure to leave likes, comments, and subscribe to let me know, and leave feedback in the comments so I can know how to make these videos for you. I'll see you in the next video when we crown a Stanley Cup champion through an NHL 20 simulation. This has been Hockey Strix.